world. You probably know who I am. I'm Jordanna with Modern Day Sorcerer. Today, we have joining us Jennifer Ritz. So Jennifer and I are going to have a conversation about her participation in the Sorcerer School on-ramp and what her experience has been like. But I want you to meet Jennifer first. So Jennifer is a novelist. She actually just completed her third novel, which is a really big and amazing deal. Jennifer is a novelist. She lives in Austin, Texas. And she's all sorts of amazing things, including she also teaches creative writing workshops for teens. Jennifer, is there anything else you want to add that you want people to know about you before we dive in and start talking about your experience in Sorcerer School?
I don't think so. Those are some great highlights.
So you ready to dive in?
Absolutely.
Okay. So the first thing I would love to know, what kind of space were you in? Like when you were starting to feel like it was time for something new, time to dig deeper, what were some of the results that you were looking for? Like what were some of the things that you were like, if only I could have this or be this then? What were those things?
Well, there's no doubt that a huge focus in my world is my fiction. And I had finished my third novel and I had been shopping it for a while, and I was sort of trying to decide where to go with it, what to do with it in order to have the biggest impact and really have connection with characters, readers, that sort of thing. So I'm sure there was a certain element of, well, if I could only have, that connection, or if I could only have that success, I would be even happier, like that sort of thing. Certainly money is always nice. So even greater money flow is good. Looking for a partner, like a lifelong romantic partner, that's sort of fabulous. But what's interesting is that I wasn't necessarily looking to dive deeper at the time you came into my world. I don't remember if I've told you this or if you knew this. I can't remember. Should I tell you?
Yeah, please.
I actually was part of a mastermind and had been a part of a mastermind for several years. We were meeting once a week, and I've always had coaches like off and on for 10 years, but that had sort of become the substitute for coaching over a period of a few years. And then one day I was looking, I never open my junk email. And for some reason I opened my junk email and there was an email in there from you. And of course I knew who you were. I had worked with you 5 years ago, and I had this like really massive financial shift. And I know I told you this part, that a friend of mine, when I was telling her about you, she said, well, was that like self-sabotage? Like, why have you not worked with her anymore? Like, you should have immediately just been booking her week after week, month after month, because of the big financial shifts that I had 5 years ago. I had not done that. And we hadn't really been in touch, I don't think, hardly at all. I mean, I'd sort of followed here and there, like maybe looked at a video or two. And then this email came up in my junk email, and it was a direct email from you. It wasn't like one of your, this is going out to my list kind of emails. You had specifically reached out and asked if I wanted to be part of the program. And I just thought, this is so strange. And I really pay attention to those kinds of synchronicities, because I feel like there's a reason why they've dropped into my lap. And then was sort of history from there. I mean, I reached out to you and we had a call, and it just seemed like such a good fit.
I am super curious. So given that you and I did do a little bit of private work together, which I no longer do, right? So is this whole other layer and iteration of the work. Now it's like, oh, there's this leadership development program. Oh, this is community-based work. What was it that had you either knowing that this whole different iteration of the work was the right fit, or being willing to say yes to something that was very different than private work that you had known before?
The leadership aspect of it, as somebody who works so much on my own, like with my writing workshops, with my novels, I tend, and you know this from working with me in the group, like I tend not to think of myself as a leader. Like I am for my workshops, I am with my characters, but I'm not like a leader changing the world. I tend not to think of myself that way. I'm having to reframe that and reshift that perspective. So it wasn't that. I think that part of it was maybe that initial call with you. We have that, not the 10-minute call that just like, hey, are we a fit, but that longer call where we went into some depth about what it is that what I was looking for and what the program seemed like. And I think there was a lot of discussion about the body, and I'm just such a believer and the idea that everything is about the body. Like, I know that that's when my inspiration comes to me, when I'm focusing on yoga and eating healthy foods and going on walks. And I'd done energy work and that sort of thing in the past. So knowing that I could get to an even deeper, richer, more intimate version of that through you and your program was really appealing to me.
So this is curious. This is bringing up a great question. You've seen in the Sorcerer School community, there's lots of different people coming from lots of different backgrounds of self-development, spirituality, et cetera, et cetera. For yourself, though, given that you are the kind of person that had already done a lot of deep inner work, I feel like it's important for people, that vulnerability of like getting to see that other people experience some of the same stuff, even if you've done all this deep inner work. So would you mind describing what it was like, if you can bring yourself back to that place, pre-Sorcerer School on-ramp? What were the things that you were feeling like? What was it like to not have those things that the greater money flow, that like, oh, wait, actually I am a leader, like the bigger iterations, the deeper iterations of you, as well as the bigger iterations. What was it like to be desiring of it, but not have it yet? What did that feel like?
Well, that never feels good, right? When we have that desire and there's that giant gap between where we are and what we want. I mean, that never feels very good. My mastermind sisters and I would always refer to that as the spice space. Like, we were trying to name it something that maybe was kind of fun. Like, it was a spicy space. And I try to be curious in that space, but of course it feels like something's missing. It feels like I'm not on purpose. It feels like I'm meant for something bigger. And I have to ask myself, like, how am I blocking it? Like, why isn't this showing up for me?
Now, even though you knew that there was like potency waiting for you, was there anything like in the humanity or the logistics or any of those things? Was there anything that almost stopped you from saying yes to Sorcerer School?
At the time, I was a part of the mastermind. What's curious is a few weeks after we started working together, the mastermind we all kind of went our separate ways, and just one or two of the women and I are talking occasionally. So it was like this sort of seamless blend, like from one to the other, which was really curious because we'd been meeting for like 4 years or something like that every week. But there was something about being in a group that at the time wasn't super appealing to me. I like the one-on-one attention, and I was a little hesitant to I guess divulge my vulnerability, in on a weekly basis to these people that I didn't know. I've done that in the past. I just didn't know if I felt like doing it again. And I've gone quite deep with that group.
Very much so. It's so funny how I've seen this time and time again, and it shows up differently. You've seen it shows up so differently for everyone. There's pretty much no doubt that like the stuff you come in with, that like it's kind of a combination of, there's your intentions coming to fruition, and then there's the fears and doubts that you had intermingling with the intentions to give you the growth that's really precisely like perfect for you. Yeah. And so it's been amazing to get to. I want to acknowledge you in that process, that it's like you came in with the fear of more vulnerability, and yet you have been such a model of it for the community. So thank you for that.
Oh my gosh, thank you. That's amazing.
Okay, let's back up a little bit back to like, all right, so there was some fear of like, can I really be vulnerable with the community? Is community work even the right thing for me? I know I've gotten results with one-on-one, but like, it's been years. This is very, very different. I already have a mastermind right now, right? And yet there were results you wanted, and there was kind of this feeling, right? This feeling that propelled you. You're in the on-ramp now. You're getting going. You've said yes. Can you describe what your experience was like settling into it, and what kind of your first impressions were as you started to settle into the experience?
Well, first of all, the connection with the body, which is, of course, such a huge focus for you in this group, Jordanna, like that's what you talk about. And that felt so powerful, like on not just on the weekly basis because of our calls, but sometimes just on my own, I was finding myself going back to the recordings because I wanted to go deep in and really connect with myself. What's interesting too, I think, is that, we started, I guess, in February, or I started in February, and then, pandemic. And it was at this time where, things were sort of falling apart, and everybody, a friend of mine said, it's like the universe is saying, here's a trigger for you, and here's a trigger for you, and here's a trigger for you. And like, it kind of feels that way. And at the same time, it was fascinating to me that there was movement that I had not been expecting. Like, instead of looking at what was happening around me and just getting lost and feeling mired in the unhappiness and the uncertainty of it all, I felt more grounded than I had felt in some time, which was really interesting, given that I was going through some personal stuff just in my family that was difficult. And instead I felt really grounded, and I had these big shifts, things that were happening that actually had my life taking on even more positive notes, perhaps, than they might have otherwise. Yeah.
Okay. So some people who are curious about the Sorcerer School on-ramp, there's a couple of different, obviously there's a multitude of different forms of people and our own interesting nature. And there tends to be a couple of different kinds of people when it comes to the concept of positivity. So I want to hear from you, because I feel like you, before you came in, had your own take, and then have been developments. So where I'm going with this.
Yes.
There can be a concern coming into Sorcerer School, like, so I'm going to have to explore the shadows. No, I just want to think positive. Yeah. And then there's other people who are like, I want to think positive, but I can't. So I don't. You came in, and obviously you don't want to give away all of your previous stuff. You had done a lot of work with positivity before, though. Yes. And it was like time to explore the shadows. How, as you settled into that process, did you have any fears prior to it? And what was the experience like for you, given that a lot of people who have explored positivity before, it's like there can be a fear of, but if I go into the shadow realm, I can't still stay positive. I can't have good things happen. Can you describe what your experience was like settling into more of the shadow realm while you still tend to be a positive person?
Yeah, I think I definitely had a hesitance about the idea of going into this shadow realm. As a matter of fact, one of my mastermind sisters, who's a coach herself, like, that's her focus. And I was always like, why are you doing that? Like, why would people want to sign up for that? Like, there's enough madness in the world and chaos in the world. Why would you focus on the shadow? And of course, I also say that, like, I have this very carefully delineated life in some ways, in the sense that I write this fiction, and it's very dark. Like, my fiction just is very dark, and I explore a lot in my fiction. And that's like part of my process of maybe working things out. And at the same time, I think that as hesitant as I was, and you were so, you really eased us in, and like being able to connect with my body, and a lot of the meditations and the energy work and the guidance that you gave us in those sessions, like moving in, it didn't feel scary, oddly. Instead, that's really interesting now that I'm articulating that. I'm not sure I've ever articulated this to you, but instead of feeling scary, it felt more like I was holding myself, like I was getting to know myself on a deeper level. And then when something would come up, even if it was sad to me or frightening to me or whatever, in that moment, it felt like I could be more tender with it, or more tender with myself somehow. And then it would just like shift, like it would truly move through me. I know that in that on-ramp session, sometimes after our calls, sometimes I'd like, with any energy work, sometimes I'd be super energized and sometimes I'd be tired, but I was never in a situation where I felt low. Like, I might have times where I cried a little bit, or I felt like a little wrung out, but then the end result was that when I felt up again, I felt higher up. Yeah.
I have all this gratitude hearing you speak it through in this, because you haven't specifically said, and like I felt it, and I'm experiencing a lot of gratitude because that's what this work is about. So yes. Thank you for sharing.
Well, may I add something too?
Of course.
I feel like that's interesting that you're saying that, because it's funny how, I'm have such a huge appreciation practice. And as part of my journaling every morning, like I, write out things that I love. And whenever I'm in a particularly stressful situation, I find that that's a really good way to like drop in and like remember all the things that are good. And yet I see you every week and I'm just like, okay, it's time for my call. And I don't ever say, hey, you're amazing and you're changing my life. Like, and I, I really should acknowledge that. I did acknowledge it in the book. I put you in my acknowledgements. I did do that.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Well, and I think that my intention is like for you to know that you're doing it yourself. So it's okay. Like, thank you for saying that. And I'm doing my job because you are doing it in you. It is your experience. And that's like, you're doing the work,
Yeah, but you're guiding me, girl. So, really
all right. So can we turn the tables just a moment for the logistically minded people? So you're in the on-ramp, you're settling in, there's weekly sessions, there's like time that you got to chunk out, whether you do it recording or live, there's logistics. Mm-hmm. How would you say, what was your experience of the logistics? Did you have any doubts logistically before? And what was it like as you settled into the logistical parts of the on-ramp?
So as far as the time commitment is concerned, the calls were pretty much, unless you plunked them on a Friday night, like because I joined before the pandemic, I would say that they were pretty much on the worst possible day at the worst possible time. For me, they're Tuesdays at noon. And Tuesday was my big writing day because I had a few other little things, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. And so Tuesday was this day where I was like, all right, I've got this swath of time. Like I can be writing by 9:30. I can go all the way like into the evening. And then suddenly I had this call right smack in the middle of the day. Sometimes I am like starving by the end of it because I don't eat beforehand. And I'm like, oh my God, I just have to eat. And sometimes I would be a little tired afterwards. But again, it's kind of like going into that shadowy side and then coming up even better. I know that ultimately, even if it's a commitment of time right now, I know that is as much of a commitment as it is that the end result is so powerful. Like, I don't want to miss the call. I know that even if I show up a little cranky, a little tired, whatever, and if I just go with my guidance, like as you're taking us through different, like now I'm talking specifically, actually not about the on-ramp, but like what comes after is just that much more magical. But once you get to that stage, if you choose to stay with the program, like if I just follow my guidance and I let just whatever wants to be worked on in the moment come up, then again, like I come out the other side so much clearer and so much happier and so much, I just know what the next move is. This is really good that this is really like helping me understand. Like I haven't taken maybe the time to like recognize what this has been doing for me on a weekly basis.
Oh my gosh.
No wonder the mastermind sort of dissipated. Like I didn't need it anymore.
You're in a mastermind with your own consciousness and your own awareness now.
Exactly. I love myself.
I love it. Okay, so you mentioned some results, already kind of diving into the on-ramp. Mm-hmm. Do you have a sense of the timing? Like how quickly was it, how soon did you start to see results the moment you entered the on-ramp?
Well, immediately, like truly within a week or so. I mean, there were like big, massive shifts. I had something going on from a family perspective that had been going on for quite some time, that like over a year, that needed to shift. And I absolutely was dumbfounded by the way it shifted. Like it was one of those things where and I kind of like resisted it at first. And then I thought there's really nothing I can do about this situation. And so I just let it go. And that has been a fascinating sort of experience, especially at the beginning of, right as this was right before the pandemic was starting. So like a few weeks prior, I've been divorced for 7.5 years. And I feel like from a financial perspective, there's always been this, like, is there enough? Is there enough? Like how, like, which is exhausting. And it seemed like as soon as we started this work, then the pandemic kind of came along. I used to have girls in my living room for writing workshops. Clearly that wasn't going to happen anymore. And instead of things like just getting really crunchy and constricted, somehow I was just like, like, I wonder what's going to happen. And I mean, of course, many people are doing things on Zoom. I'm not an anomaly in that regard, but I don't know. I feel like everything has just sort of opened up in a way. And I don't know. I think I'm getting better and better at just shrugging off any financial like snafu that comes up. And then something comes in that's even bigger and better. Yeah. Which is strange to say, like at this time, like when I understand that there are many people who are not in that, even people in our group, in our group who are not, that's not been the case for them necessarily. Like that's something that they're working through right now. And yeah, I've been very fortunate in that regard. Like I feel like that was a big shift for me.
Yeah. What has been your experience of what you've witnessed in others in like the beauty of what's possible for other people's inner to outer experiences?
Yeah, it's funny. It sounds kind of foolish and naive to say this, but I think that sometimes, at least this is the case for me, I don't know if it's the case for many people, we tend to think like everybody thinks the way that we do, right? Like, and so even from the very beginning, when you ask us to like, let's talk about, do you feel that you're how in touch with your body do you feel like you are? Like, I remember that was one of the big questions. And I was like, well, of course I'm in touch with my body. And then other people were not, but other people had it going on in other categories that were definitely like, I was kind of rating myself much lower in. And so it was really fascinating to me to realize that people are, again, it sounds so naive, but like in different places, of course we are all in different places. And just because we might be coming to this group or to the on-ramp, it's not like we're all the same, and we're not all in the same place spiritually. We're not all in the same place from a body connection. There are people who like take regularly are practicing some sort of energetic work, and there are people who they're like, shaman, what are you talking about? Like this, so it's not necessarily this group of people who are all at the same place, right? Like I think we're all starting in different ways, and we all have strengths, and we all have aspects that we want to improve upon.
How do you feel that getting to experience this version of community where everyone's in a different place and they're sharing their variations of wisdom, how has that impacted the results you've been able to get?
It gives me a reason to go deeper in self-reflection and ask myself, well, wait a minute, like I'm just automatically making this assumption about myself because, I've been around for this many years and I think I know myself pretty well, but then Mario will say something or Mark will say something or Lewis will say something. And I think, well, wait a minute, I never really thought about that. Maybe what would happen if I asked myself that question about what they've experienced, or that's kind of interesting. I think I might do the same thing, and never looked at it as something that was maybe something I could improve upon. Like I'm just doing it. Yeah. So absolutely. There's something about, and again, I had been really hesitant about the group initially, but they're kind of great. I mean, they all are great. And everybody is so supportive and kind and intentional and thoughtful. And I don't just mean like thoughtful, kind, I mean like thoughtful, like they really take time to think about what they want to say. And it's admirable. Like there are some members of the group where I'm like, wow, I want to be that self-reflective, I want to know myself that well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Getting to witness each of you progress in those stages too has just been, it is so like, I am so humbled by getting to witness each of you progress in, going deeper into your own wisdom, into the thoughtfulness that you're naming. It's like that deep mindfulness of contributing that which is yours to contribute. Like getting to witness that is one of the most humbling parts of my experience as a facilitator.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that word mindfulness, that's so perfect. That's exactly what it feels like, a mindfulness.
Yeah. And embodiment is also coming through. It's all connected. Okay. You entered the on-ramp. You started seeing results right away. What are the results by the time you completed the on-ramp and transferred into the full potency of Sorcerer School? What are the results that you were able to get both on the outward logistical, physical, tangible stuff, as well as the internal results.
Wow. Okay. Well, first, and I will speak to this first because I feel like a lot of people want this is money, right? Like a lot of people are like, where's the money? How is this going to help me create more money, more revenue in my business, whatever? And so what I will say is just right off the bat, more money has been flowing to me since probably a week after I joined, then actually came into me, like that since maybe I worked with you privately. Like truly, like it's just been a nice flow in spite of everything that's happening in the world, which is wonderful. I would say that I have been able to carve out more space, like more space has opened up to me. I have more people who are interested in the workshops that I teach, and I've had to add more workshops. I published my book, which is fantastic. And it was just, and it often is with my work because I feel like my work is very sacred, but it was a very easy, seamless process, which was fabulous. And the responses that I'm getting are great, which is cool. I feel like one thing that sometimes happens, like I remember seeing a shaman once, and before I saw him the first time, he said, now, even just scheduling this appointment can set the energy like moving, right? And so I feel like that definitely happened when I signed up for the on-ramp. And sometimes what comes in is disguised. It's not necessarily going to come with a bright, pretty bow. It's just not, right? Like sometimes what's coming is that shadowy thing that you need to work through in order to get to the other side of it. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that those kinds of things popped up. But what's great is that, as being in those weekly calls and getting in touch with my body and moving through all of that allowed me to be curious in a way I wouldn't have otherwise been, and, has sort of gotten me to that other side.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So can you speak just a little to how is this work different from other stuff you've done before, be it coaching, masterminds, et cetera? How is your experience in the work different, and how is the work itself different?
I feel like the majority of the coaching that I've done in the past, I loved all my coaches. They were all amazing and were exactly the right person on my path at that particular time, were 75, 85% cerebral. Like it was all like what you were visioning. It was all what you were appreciating. It was all what you wanted and desiring. And I feel like you might be the only person actually that I've worked with that's all about the interior. It's not that we're not spending any time appreciating or desiring or thinking about what we want, but we're acknowledging like the whole like sacred like being that we are. I mean, I feel like I'm saying those words and I'm like, this is not really the way I talk, but that really is what it has come to feel like, like it really, is that okay that I'm saying that?
Of course it is. Well, and I actually feel like it's like the way you're describing it, it is such a perfect reflection in that, like, you've seen, like you described all these outward results too. Right? Yeah. Like, the people that are coming into your workshops, that's changing and growing and the money is flowing. And, you've had relationship shifts and like the outside obstacles have dissolved. And yet it was the internal stuff that got you there. So it's, yeah, that there's a right or wrong way to speak to this work. There's not. And yes.
So much the internal work and truthfully, because of where we were as like a world with a pandemic and having to be inside so much of the time, like there was a lot of time for self-reflection. And honestly, it's been a year of interior work. And I will add one thing that I saw at one point, and I think this was in the on-ramp, and you were taking us on like an sort of interior guided meditation. And what came up for me, it was such a delightful, like little vision. What I love about those guided meditations is I love in going deeper and then like seeing what comes up, like what image comes up, what phrase comes up, because it's always so rich to me. Like it's always completely nothing I would ever expect. And then it ends up being so rich. So in this one particular meditation or vision, I saw myself with like a picnic basket. And I remember thinking, I was opening up and I thought, I wonder what's inside, like as if somehow I didn't know. Like my brain was completely detached. And I opened it and it was a pen and it was a book, like a blank book and a magnifying glass. And I turned and I'd seen in multiple visions. I swear to God, it was because of that stupid Tiger King like series that I had watched on Netflix. But I kept seeing a tiger. So maybe that's like the easiest method to bring it to me. But I turned and I looked at the tiger that had been following me around off and on through multiple visions. And I looked into his eye and I can't believe I'm telling you all this. I'm telling the world this. And then I could see there was like this like opening, like I don't know, like opening in the like cosmos, and I could see like the inner, you know how like I'm trying to think of like what it would be called, like I don't know, like a toy machine or a candy machine or something, like the really intricate kinds where like everything's like a crank and a turn and it was like gold. And anyway, I could see it and it was like, oh, okay, like this is what I'm seeing, like this is like the workings behind everything. I don't know.
Whoa.
It was pretty intense. It was pretty intense and super cool. And I just came out of that thinking, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing with my time right now with this magnifying glass, is like just going in.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
I feel like that's such a good example too. Sometimes people question, you're saying cosmic wisdom too, like I can't access that. And what you're describing is cosmic wisdom.
Absolutely.
Yours. Like what is yours to bring forth?
Mm-hmm.
It's really cool. Was there anything shocking or mind-blowing about this work? Anything that you didn't expect that you like wound up with as well?
Honestly, the going in and being able to drop in so easily and to access sort of like that cosmic wisdom repeatedly, like not even just with you in the sessions, but then gradually like on my own, honestly, that's massive. And to feel like sort of like connected across lines with like ancestral lines and all of that sort of thing, if that's what you're into, like I like that idea. And so to me, that was really exciting. Yeah, I guess I would just say it's amazing to me how things open up when you go in.
Yes.
Yeah.
That might be the answer to this next question, but I want to hear from you. What would be the biggest reason why you would recommend the on-ramp of Sorcerer School and, diving into this work? What's the biggest reason why you would recommend it to someone?
Well, first of all, there's like a sort of like it's not a smaller reason, but it's just like to be more in touch with yourself. That's not a small reason. It's everything, right? But it is to be more in touch with yourself, to work through whatever you need to work through with your body so that then you have like the things that you want. I'm not like the things like check, but like truly like going in so that you can be more expansive and bring in more of what you want. So there's that aspect, but also I would just add that like truthfully, like it's working with you is transformative, like on a deep level, and it happens quickly. I know that when I worked with you privately, and a big part of what I had just gotten divorced and what we were working on was the financial piece. And like, I think I had 3 calls with you, like short, an hour at the most, like something not that much. And it was like, bang, like, everything shifted in ways that I could not have orchestrated. Like I could not have imagined. And it was just sudden, like just the way I opened up as a result of working with you, which is why I think my friend was like, why did you not continue working with her? Like every day, like, why not? And now I am.
Okay. So last but not least, then didn't know I wanted to ask this either. Given that the sorcerer concept is kind of, some people are like, oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Or, oh, I've always felt that. And then others are like, ooh, that's weird. Or, uh-oh, are there religious connotations or are there, there's concerns that it brings up for people.
Sure.
For yourself, how would you describe like, not everyone who's doing the work feels even connected to the sorcerer archetype. It's not necessary for the potency of this work. But for yourself, how would you describe your connection to it or what it means to you in doing this work?
Well, I mean, words are very important to me. I mean, I've really built my life around them, with writing workshops. I have a PhD in literature. So like words are very important to me. So when I think of sorcerer, I think of powerful, and not like powerful with any kind of negative connotation, but like powerful, like source from within, source, right? Sorcerer, like source from within, and magical. And those words like light things up for me. Like I want to feel those ways. I want to feel powerful and magical and like a sorcerer.
And
Yeah.
boy, have I seen it come through you. So so much so, again, humbled. So are there any last words? Do you have any last words for somebody that is, in the contemplation or considering doing this work or maybe having doubts? Any last words for people that are curious about and interested in doing this work?
Honestly, consider this as like don't even waffle. Don't wobble, just do it. I mean, honestly, like I would recommend it to anyone. It's so powerful. It's incredible. It gets you so in touch with yourself. It brings you so much of what you want, or allows you to shift your perspective about what you do want and really understand what that is. Like, there's no reason not to do it. Like, even if you're afraid, like, hey, that's the sign. Like, just do it. Do it, do it, do it. Yeah.
Thank you so much for this conversation, Jennifer. As I mentioned previously, anyone that's like, oh, and this Jennifer woman, we will include a link to her website too, so that you can check out her work. I've read a little bit of her work, and my God, is her writing powerful. So yeah, if you're interested in checking out Jennifer's work as well, that is also available to you. Probably below the video, you'll figure it out. Thank you so much for this time today, Jennifer.
You're so welcome. And thank you for everything you're doing for the world. Truly.
All right. Bye, everyone.